Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, midgets and giants, welcome to another program in the Eyes of Truth, the English edition. And today's guest is Uday Singh, a friend of mine and a migrant, or an immigrant, let me rephrase that, to Russia. Not a migrant, he's here permanently. Uh, and by the way, he's a RT, Russia Today star.
Why, hello there. Come hither, boys and girls, and hear the magical tale of the magic monetary theory. That's right. You no longer have to worry about all the pesky gold and silver to buy what you want. Just print, print, print. And when Marco Polo traveled to ancient China in the 1200s, the Mongol Khans of China showed him their magic monetary theory, where they had pure fiat paper money, and they could just print whatever they needed for whatever they wanted to buy. But alas, even that story had a dark ending. For the magic monetary theory unleashed the twin beasts, the tidal wave of debt ridden by the beast of inflation. And when Marco Polo returned to China 20 years later, there were no Mongol Khans of China anymore. China had just gone through a vicious civil war that was sponsored by a total economic collapse. Let's fast forward 800 years. And the modern monetary theory is all the rage in the Western leadership. That's right, you no longer have to worry about debt. Debt no longer matters. No, just print, print, print all you need. But yet, the twin beasts are back. The tsunami of debt swallows up whole nations, causing defaults, causing collapses in currency, destroying people, destroying their lives. The beast of inflation swallows up your hard-earned wealth. The products that cost $126 back in 22 now cost well over $400 in 24. That's right, hyperinflation is here. What do you do to save your hard-earned wealth? Where do you go? You go to gold, not paper gold, physical gold. And you don't keep that gold in the United States, where in 1932 the government confiscated gold. It'll do it again. You don't keep it in Western Europe that's collapsing before our very eyes. Where do you go? What do? You come to exitstrategy.world, the company that's going to help you find the safe haven for your gold and your well-being. Exitstrategy.world, the saviors in this dark fairy tale.
The long, shady history. So,
Are you gonna get
say what?
you're gonna get me in trouble?
Hey, what are friends for? What are
Yeah,
drinking buddies for? Uh, but to know your secrets and then expose them to everybody.
yeah.
So, Uday, talk to us. Tell us about how you got to Russia, where you came from, how you got here, why you got here, how you find Russia. For all those people who are looking and going, "Oh, that's the land far, far away where dragons and trolls rule," or orcs, anyways.
Well, Russia is always surrounded by so many stereotypes. Even in Asia. I mean, people get a bit surprised when you say, "Oh, you're moving to Russia, you're moving to Moscow." They're like, "Well, that's a path less taken," but not anymore. Actually, I'm seeing a lot of people moving from all over the world over the past 10, 15 years to Russia, and they're building their lives here, and very successfully so. I mean, I came here about 8 years ago, and I haven't looked back since. It's been a wonderful time, and the reason I came here was to do my bachelor's. I finished high school in India, came over here to an unknown land, didn't know the language. I had a stupid stereotype where I thought, oh, of course, all Europeans would speak in English. It would be pretty easy here. That
You've never
certainly
been to
wasn't.
Spain in that case, or France.
Well, I had never been to Europe before, so that stereotype went to hell, of course.
I bet
But
it did.
yeah, yeah. But then I was force-fed the Russian language, and because all my friends, all my surroundings were in Russian, so I learned the language pretty fast. I mean, as much as I could, of course. But once you do actually get the hang of it, then you actually start, socializing and integrating with society. You understand that this is a wonderful place to be in. It's not that scary at all. I mean, of course, it's cold. That is scary to many people. But once you get used to it, once you get used to the comfort, the creature comforts of living in Moscow, the perfect transportation systems, a great healthcare system, everything at your disposal, 24/7 delivery. So it's these are the small things that make your quality of life in any city very good. So I finished my bachelor's, and then I got a job in RT, and had a wonderful 2 years in RT. We filmed a wonderful show. It was called The Gun Tour. We went around the country. We tried out the latest military equipment, and made videos of it. So that was a wonderful experience. I mean, I love RT. But then of course, it was time.
So let me get this straight. You were a star of gun porn.
Yes, you can say that. We were basically demolition ranch of Russia. So it was a wonderful time. Like, of course, it had its ups and downs. Like, they once did shut down our channel, and they put it back up again. Of course, I'm talking about YouTube here. So that gave us quite a big scare. But
what year was that?
Yeah.
What year was that?
That was last year, actually.
Oh, okay. So during the SVO. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we went around the country, made some incredible content. It's still up on YouTube, by the way. I mean, if you go to Gun Tour on YouTube and you not Google, but you go on YouTube, you say T90M or any Kalashnikov, you'll see our videos coming up, and I think you would really enjoy them. We go really in depth, not just about what the weapons are about, but also their history and why they're relevant today. So, I mean, it's a side of the military-industrial complex that you don't really get to see that often, especially the Russian one, because I mean, it's all behind closed doors. We had to get, it wasn't easy to get the permissions to film all those let's say military objects, So it was a great experience. Then I moved to a very good pharmaceutical company. Now I'm working in pharmaceuticals, an office job. So went from zero.
So that's why you're so happy all the time.
No, I was happy. I was happy all the time. Like, all the time that I have here, it's had its ups and downs, but I mean, like life anywhere. But it's certainly been worth it, this journey. I mean, it's just starting, by the way. I mean, I'm talking as if I'm like 100 years old, but but yeah,
quarter of the way there, a little more.
Yeah.
So
what about you, Captain? I mean, whenever we used to go out, and now you're coming less and less often to the city, but whenever we used to go out, you told some incredible military stories as well about working in logistics.
I'm in the city quite often doing filming on different shows. I just came back for the day. I just don't get out drinking that often.
Yeah, well, that's good. At the same time, not to get out.
Yeah, definitely need to do that. Sometime, get the women folk with us. So tell me this: when you decided to go to Russia, what was your family's reaction?
I finished high school, and most of my classmates, like, not many of us stayed in India.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a sad thing, actually, because the best and brightest of the country actually leave the country because of, because whatever, some people have relatives abroad, they just want to join higher salaries sometimes. It's India is a very competitive environment, and many people don't actually survive the competition. Only if you're really, really good, you get the best jobs in India. You get the best positions, either in government or in private. So, I mean, of course, I wasn't prepared to handle that type of competition. So I said, of course, I'm going to go abroad, like many of my classmates. So some of them went to Canada, some of them went to the US, Australia. The regular, the path most taken is the West, of course. So what I did was, I was talking to my family. My grandfather, actually, he had been to the Soviet Union back in the 70s. He was part of the Indo-Soviet friendship nation that came to Russia, and that was about 50 years ago, right? And my grandfather says to me, "They go to Moscow. That's a wonderful place." I said, "Granddad, you were there like 50 years ago. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, there's already been like a second revolution there. I mean, are you sure it's the same?" He said, "Of course, it's the best place. Don't worry." And I said, "All right, thank you. Why not? It's just 6 hours away." I mean, the great thing about Moscow is that I'm just 6 hours away from home. I take a flight tomorrow, I can be in my place in 6-7 hours. So it's just very convenient as compared to flying to, I don't know, New York or England, or let's say 15, 20 hours. So I came here, didn't know the language. It was pretty cold and it was overwhelming, and didn't know anyone. I thought everyone would speak English. Nobody spoke English. Just a couple of English barely spoke English, right? That I met in bars. So,
And even the English here don't speak English.
yeah. So I mean, it was difficult at first, but then I was surrounded by foreigners that had also come to Russia, like me, like Egyptians, Germans, French, Koreans, Taiwanese, Chinese, everyone. So, I mean, we were surrounded by foreigners, and we had a good friend group. Most of them actually stayed in Russia, and I also stayed, and it's been wonderful ever since.
So wait a minute. As an Indian in Russia, you had friends who were Chinese.
Yeah, of course.
No border
I mean,
disputes.
no, we rarely talk about politics. And Chinese.
That's good.
Aside, if you leave the politics aside, Chinese are very nice people. I mean, so are we. I mean, we can all be friends, if we all just, come to the negotiating table and just sit down, relax, have a beer. I think Chinese can also, relax a bit, and we can solve all our issues. So otherwise, I even knew people from Pakistan. So which was unheard of in India, because you would never imagine you'd ever actually meet a Pakistani. I mean, other than the battlefield, right? So I mean, in the border regions, because it's an active zone.
Yeah. You've had what, 5 wars, I think, with Pakistan.
We've had quite a few border disputes, 2 or 3 major wars. I think 3 major wars, 5 or 6 localized conflicts, multiple incursions, insurgencies. Pakistan has been infiltrating the Indian borders in the north in Kashmir for decades. Of course, I mean, there are other powers at play, right? But what can you do? Our military always has to be there on guard 24/7 on the borders. And we're talking about the Himalayas. That is the highest battlefield in the world, an active battlefield. You've got artillery, you've got tanks, you've got 2 nuclear powers basically just waiting for some shit to go down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of knows that in Ukraine with the US on the other side.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, it's a very difficult question, isn't it? If how many countries should actually be nuclear, right? You know what I mean? If you say, if one of either of us, Pakistan or India, if we weren't nuclear, it would be I don't know, it would be quite a different situation.
Yeah.
I think we might have solved the situation. You know what I mean?
Right.
So Russia in this way has the upper hand here, but at the same time, Russia won't use nukes on its own, on the land that for Russia is so close to its heart. I mean, the Ukrainians, Ukraine, where so many Russians live. I mean, the reason behind this special military operation is actually to bring it back home, which I think should have been done a long time ago.
Yeah. So your relatives, what did they say when you said, mom, dad, uncle, aunt, brother, sister, what have you, I'm going to Russia? Did they
So
look at you like, go
I
to
mean,
California?
they said it's actually not that um, strange because you have so many Indian students coming to Russia, coming to post-Soviet countries to learn medicine
Mm-hmm.
because learning medicine, studying medicine is very expensive because you've got a limited number of seats and a lot of students waiting to get enrolled. So that's why the prices have gone really high. And that's why a very popular destination is Russia because Russia has so many medical institutions and very good medical institutions. And of course, so it's a very good place for Indians to go and study medicine and get the certificates and learn medicine. And some of them actually stay here and continue their practice. I know a couple of Indian doctors in Russia. My wife's grandfather got operated not too long ago by an Indian eye doctor in Moscow. So I was surprised, but then at the same time, I wasn't surprised because I mean, there's so many Indian medical students here. So it's quite a not people weren't that shocked. People were like, all right, let's see what happens, right? And it was great. I mean, I only have good things to report back.
That's good. That's very good. And
Yeah.
yeah, so what, okay. So when you started dating a Russian girl,
um, when did I start dating a Russian? I mean, it's
not
very
not not, not when, I'm not prying. Not prying for
when
that. What did your family say then? Did they have a because
they were
I
very
mean, in India still has a caste system, right? If
yeah.
you're looking at somebody who's outside of that, fully outside of that caste system, what's the attitude like?
So I mean, I come from a very conservative background. I come from a very conservative state. So in that state, you don't actually mingle with the other castes, right? So you got four major like categories, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got Brahmins on top, then you got the warrior caste, then you got the merchant caste, and then you got the labor class. So these are four distinct categories. You're not really supposed to go, jump from caste to caste when you're choosing your partner. But but there's a big but. So since foreigners don't fall into the caste system, you can you have the opportunity to integrate them into your own caste, make them one of your own. So when an Indian guy or an Indian girl marries, for example, a Russian, they can technically bring them to that caste. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What caste are you from?
I'm from the second one, the warrior caste.
Yeah,
I came with my flag, so to speak.
yeah. I come from a long line of military family.
Well, I was
Boyars,
Russian.
dворяне, boyar, nobles.
Yeah, I would consider Russians actually, I mean, the closest to the warrior caste. These are a fighting people. I mean, look, you guys have been you guys have been attacked throughout centuries. You've got the Mongols, you've got the
1,000 years plus.
yeah, you got the Mongols, you got the Teutonic Knights, you've got Napoleon, then you had Hitler. Now you
Wait a
have
minute, wait a minute,
NATO.
wait a minute. You missed the Swedes. You missed the Poles, the Lithuanians and the Poles. You missed the you you missed the Pechenyegs. You missed the Polavцы. You missed the Ottomans. You missed the Khivans. You missed at their own time the Chechens, who used to slave raid. The Bulgarians, the Romanians. Well, there weren't any Romanians at that point, but the Hungarians, basically anybody that hasn't been too lazy to get their asses up off the ground and invade Russia. Yeah, there aren't that many people who haven't tried.
And and still, what what I respect the most about these people is, right, unlike many nations that consider themselves to be, you know, very powerful, very civilized, very, you know, proud, Russia actually managed to do all that, actually managed to stand, I mean, facing all of these threats, facing the most powerful armies in the world, for example, the German army back in the 40s and 30s. So, and Russia withstood it and, you know, held its own. They didn't fall like the French or all of Europe, for example. They stood their
Surrender
ground.
monkeys.
They would rather die than let an inch of land go.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
I hold
it's
that
something
mentality.
because you've got so much land. It's such a huge country. I mean, of course, there were many people that would just go and think, all right, so the Germans want the European part, let's say, of Russia, right, up to the Ural Mountains. We can just go back to the fucking Urals. Why do we have to stay, you know, and fight? So, well, what I'm thinking is that like the Russians were a different breed of its own. I'm just saying that.
We're just too stubborn to know when to quit. You know,
Yeah,
the whole thing, surrender, it's a nasty little word. It just doesn't ring well.
it's not in your blood. So, and look now. I mean, you've got you're again under threat from the West again. So, and the Russians are united. Most of them are united, and not just Russians. You've got all the republics, right? You've got the southern republics, the Caucasus republics, set in Buryatia, Yakutia, all these Kumiks, everyone just, you know, coming together and fighting for their country. It's not, they're not saying, oh, this is a Slav on Slav war, right? We're not a part of it. Everyone has come together and facing this united threat. They understand what the West has in store for them. If
Oh yeah.
Russia, they completely understand what's going to happen. Look what they did to Yugoslavia.
Oh, they'll do
That's the
worse
same,
than that to us.
of course. So that's what they have for you in store. So,
But you know, they don't hide it. I mean, look at the flights of fantasy about wiping Russia out and breaking into, like, I've seen maps from 10 to 40 little governments, and I mean these guys, they don't, you know, they
as well, like you got this Moscow, you've got the southern republics all broken up, you've got Siberia, you've got the Far East, which is a completely different country. And what I mean, this is their dream,
oh yeah.
but you guys won't let that happen. I'm sure of that. No way.
By the way, you do know, here's a question for you. You know that Slavs and Indians are related.
Yeah, I mean, I heard about this theory because there was
It's not
this
a
massive.
theory. Wait, it's not a theory. It's genetics. Because Slavs are R1A haplogroup. The male Y chromosome is an R1A haplogroup. Russians are
Yeah,
like 50%. Poles and Belarus are like around 70%, and so on. Germans are R1B. They're the next set of mutations over. But Indians, not the Indians that were the Hindu Valley civilization, the ones that moved to Southwest India, but the
you're talking
Aryan,
Indians mostly, I think, that migrated from the northwest.
right? The
Based.
Aryans, the real Aryans, not what Hitler called the Stolden, are R1A. So it's the same haplogroup.
Yeah, yeah. So I heard about this. I actually read about this. You told me this actually over a
Mhm.
beer.
I did.
Uh,
Maybe I did.
yeah, yeah. So after that, I did do some research and I did find the data, and it was very interesting.
Yeah.
If you go north into the Himalayas, right, the Indian Himalayas, you will see these local people who've been living there for thousands of years, right? And you see their knitting, the shawls that they knit, and they've got these very unique patterns. I mean, I brought my wife one of those shawls. I mean, I don't know where it is right now. I would show you. I'm going to show you them later. And the patterns on those shawls, they're ancient Slavic patterns that I saw from the shawls that I saw from Krasnodar, for example, the typical garb that they wear. And I was very shocked to see that. Very surprised.
You know, if you look, there's some pictures on the internet that you can still find people from northern India. They're blue-eyed, blonde-haired, you know, and they have absolutely Slavic features. So you could toss them into any village, these kids, and just fit right in.
It is like that. I mean, and not just in Northwest India. You've got them in Pakistan. You've got them in Afghanistan as well. So this whole belt, it's very close. It's very close to you guys genetically. So I mean, I can say in some way that I feel at home here as well. So
see, what the sacred language for the Brahmin, I can't think of it right now. It starts with an S.
Sanskrit.
Sanskrit, yeah. Sanskrit is Slavic, or Slavic is Sanskrit, whichever. I watched a couple programs where people they were interviewing a woman who took part in the first cultural exchange between the Soviet Union and India. And everyone was speaking English, I guess, as a neutral language. And she said, this was, I guess, in the 60s, maybe the 50s, somewhere around there. Said, yeah, we went out to the village, to one of the villages to show them village life. And I asked who's living in that house. And I was told, well, it's my brother who's living in the house. And one of the Indians is like, since when do you speak Sanskrit? How do you know where it's a sacred language? Like, well, we don't, we're speaking Russian. And that's when they started connecting. The whole phrases were absolutely identical.
It is true. I mean, when I did learn some Sanskrit when I was a child in school. We've got so many words that are exactly the same. The grammatical formulations, brat, at. So it's exactly the same. Even in Hindi, we've got so many similar words. I mean, for example, din. You say din, we say din. I mean, I could never, like, you say, when it's dry, you say sukhoi, right? We say, so it's so similar. I mean, it just blows our mind all the time. But at the same time, when you come to Russia from India, all you see is something that is very, very European, like the architecture, the people, the manners. It's not that much Eastern. You know what I mean? It's very, very different. I mean, of course it would be. You are part of Europe. You're one of the biggest contributors of European civilization, art, music, ballet, the writers.
I don't claim ballet.
You don't claim ballet?
No, that came from the Western Europeans. Guys in tights. I like opera. I don't like ballet.
No, but art and culture, theater. Yes. It's a very integral part of Russian society,
I lost you. Uday, switch on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you switched off the microphone. So yeah, which is interesting. Which is but think about it. What's interesting is Russia or Soviet Union originally and India, and now Russia and India have been allies for what, about 60 years now, right? 70 years. But culturally, there's really been very limited exchanges.
Culturally, I saw a movie the other day. It was called Aphanesia, something like that. Aphonia, something like Aphanesia. This old movies from the 50s, in which a Russian traveler came to Russia, and it was such a good movie. Let me just ask, как назвали этот фильм? Афанасий Никитин? Да, Афанасий Никитин. Да. So it was a wonderful film. Like, it showed this Russian traveler coming to Russia. I'm sorry, coming to India and just traveling the country. Have you seen the movie though?
No, I haven't. No.
You have to see the film. It's from the 50s, the Soviet film. great actors, great everything.
Yeah, Soviet. Obviously, there was the Marxist ideology was in the films, and I don't subscribe to the Marxist ideology. I'm a monarchist, but
We
but the
all
film.
have our faults, Captain.
Oh, yeah. um, but the films were well written for the most part,
Yeah.
and the comedy, which modern Russian comedy, in my opinion, is just crap. It's just poorly written, with few exceptions, really poorly done comedy. Drama, everything's fine, but the Soviet Union did comedy well. They did good comedy movies,
Soviet Union did great comments, to be honest.
and somehow we lost that. Totally lost that.
Well, it also depends on the audience as well. You know what I mean? In India
Yeah.
also, we have very good, beautiful films back in the 90s and 70s and 60s. Great films. But what happened was that we all became more and more modern, more Western, cheap thrills, cheap humor. So of course the quality of everything just went down. You know what I mean?
I gotta say, I love the physics of Indian action movies.
Eh,
That's the quantum physics involved is great. When the fight scenes, the battle scenes, some of the hero movies, yeah, it's quite interesting. Um,
No, I mean we do like to fantasize, we I saw a very good Russian movie the other day. This was called T-34. It was
yeah,
about the tank. I
yeah.
mean, this T-34 hunting a ghost Panther tank.
The White Tiger, White Tiger.
What year? Yeah, that was a very, very good film.
Did,
Uh,
did you
de-
get did you get the message of the film?
um, s- Enlighten me, please.
The White Tiger is the ghost of Nazism. So it disappears in the end, right? It's a ghost tank. It appears and disappears. At the very end, the tank, it doesn't really die, it disappears. And the Russian guy who died at the very beginning of the movie but came back to life and he's hunting this tank is basically telling you that we're always going to be here and the ghost of Nazism is going to come back. But we're
Yeah,
going to be waiting for it. And prophetic, it didn't take that long before, here you go. We're back at it.
I mean because you, Nazism wasn't wiped out in 1945.
Oh, no, 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 no.
It just changed names.
Yeah.
Just changed names. That's why the Americans. I mean, I have this theory. Like, I mean, of course, it might be considered a conspiracy theory to many. The whole Marshall Plan, the whole American intervention, 1944, right, into Europe, Normandy D-Day. I mean, I think it was all. Of course, it was massive sacrifice. Of course, it was a great help to defeat Nazi Germany itself, right? But at the same time, it allowed Nazism to survive via NATO.
Oh, yeah.
That was right to make sure it survives. Otherwise, you would have the whole of Europe.
Well,
Of
it's not just via NATO. Operation Paperclip, 30,000 Nazis and their families were moved to the U.S. Top ranking guys.
head of NASA, head of so many nuclear program guys.
Oh, yeah.
The
Biochemical warfare.
okay,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, not Nazis, and there were Japanese Nazis as well.
Oh, yeah.
All the heads of the Unit 731, the notorious unit that kills millions of Chinese. They killed probably more Chinese than the Nazis killed the Jews.
Possibly. Possibly.
I mean, it
They're
is
just a
quite
lot more
possible.
Chinese.
That's true, but that doesn't change the fact, does it? Though.
No, no, it doesn't.
Yeah. So though you can't forget Operation Unthinkable. Yeah,
Yeah.
Churchill's backdoor plan to attack the Soviet Union.
I don't see that plan that could have ever gone through because the anti-aircraft capabilities at that point. There's no way an English bomber or an American bomber would have made it to Moscow with a nuclear device through that many layers of operational air defense systems and fighters.
And of course, at the time, I think the Russians were also quite ahead in making their own nuclear bomb as well.
Yeah, well, still, I think it was 49 until the first nuclear bomb was detonated. But, you
But I
know,
mean, yeah,
but the Japanese didn't surrender because of the nuclear bombs. The American firebombing wiped out huge amounts of population. In just one firebombing raid, and by the way, Dresden in Germany was just the last city. They took out every German city, a lot of French towns and villages too, and Italian. In Japan, in one raid on Tokyo, they burned 500,000 people to death. 500,000. So Hiroshima and Nagasaki were actually very small death tolls compared to what the firebombing was doing. But if you look at it, the Japanese surrendered 2 weeks later. And in between that, which the Americans don't ever talk about, was the last Japanese big army was wiped out, the Kwantung Army in Manchuria, Manchukuo. The Soviet Union, we launched an offensive, took them out in about a week and a half, took out over almost 1 million men.
great, great. I mean, of course, the Americans didn't want to send in their land army.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, of course, many people might disagree, but it was war. The Japanese did kill a lot of Americans, and if the Americans would actually physically enter Japan, they would lose a lot more men. So
Oh, yeah,
they
projections were 2 million.
yeah. So it goes two birds with one stone. You get to test the ultimate weapon, and at the same time, you don't lose your men.
Yeah.
So, of course, I mean, you have to give it to them. They did, I think, I mean, right or wrong, they made the best possible choice for them at that point.
Right. No, I'm not saying they didn't, but like I said, the Japanese didn't surrender from those blasts. They surrendered. It was in combination, but when they lost their last army that they were getting ready to ship to Japan, to the main islands, the Kwantung Army, then they had no defense left except territorial units.
But you gotta understand, I think, the Japanese ideology as well. They, even though they might be wiped out 90%, they would still fight to the last man. That's the Japanese ideology.
Woman and child.
It's honor over all else. They will never. They would do, what's called harakiri, whatever it's called, rather than surrender. So I think Americans understood that very well. So they didn't have a choice. I mean, even if the Japanese were losing by the end, they still wouldn't surrender. They would still fight to the last man. Just like Hitler wanted, by the time, when the Russians were knocking on Berlin, right, just outside Berlin, he still wanted every single German to go to fight and die against the Russians, because he said, no way would this Aryan race live under, whatever, right? They would rather die. We should rather die. He was condemning the whole nation to death. And then you say he was a nationalist. How could you be a nationalist if you condemn your whole nation to die?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
if would say, oh, wait, what I want is for the flower of the nation, the youth, the men, the women, we want you to flourish. We want you to live your best and the happiest lives. And it's not in war. It's not in going to invade Russia or the rest of the world, right? And for what?
Yeah.
So you would say, I mean, I wouldn't call Hitler a nationalist. I would call him an anti-nationalist.
You know what the funny part is too, by the way, since we were considered Mongoloids and all this, if you hadn't noticed, there are more blondes and redheads and blue eyes in Russia than there are in Germany.
Well, it's a joke, right? As blonde as Hitler, as fit as Jubbles, and as thin as and Goering. So that's the Aryan, right?
Yeah, what a motley crew that group was.
For walking hypocrisy. democracy, right? And what what the hell are you talking about? Like, you know?
Yeah, it's a sick, sick world. Hey,
Yeah,
look at Kiev. It's a sick, sick world.
yeah.
I've got to interrupt. I'm sorry. We're almost out of time. So we've got less than a minute. Do the closing remarks. Uday, it was difficult getting you on. Finally. I've been hounding you for a while. Uh, I'm gonna
You
hound
kept
you again.
you always had something to do, Captain.
Well, I'm gonna get you back on again to
So
continue this.
this
Oh,
conversation isn't.
yeah, that's right. And we do need to go have some beer.
Oh yeah,
And I want to talk to you about the Man Show as a something that would be good to set up in Russia. If you're not
that would be
familiar with it, go look up on YouTube the Man